Good afternoon, everybody, or morning. Wow, it's been 4 years since we've been in person, and this is just so awesome to see everybody. Marketing team, you all have done an amazing job. Thank you so much. So excited to be on stage today with two of my favorite clients, one I've known for a very, very long time, and one I've just gotten the luxury of knowing for about last year, Vic. And they have done some phenomenal things that Kelly Jo kind of alluded to earlier today. And I'm so excited to help them walk through the story of what they accomplished in a very, very, very short period of time, like running a marathon without even training. So over the next 30 minutes, we're just going to kind of set the stage, and they'll be able to talk a little bit about what DIRECTV was like before. And then we're going to kind of walk through how they've been able to utilize and scale their data, and then some things they might have done differently. But before we kick it all off, I would love for Mark and for Vic to introduce themselves, what they do at DIRECTV, and a little fun fact about themselves. And I'll say we have a budding movie director on our hands, and she'll talk about that.
My name's Vic Elliott. I worked to manage and onboard the CDP at the beginning of our transition away from AT&T systems. Now that we have that CDP up and running, I'm also helping with the processes by which we educate and leverage it so that we can fully utilize Tealium's incredible ability in data accuracy and targeting. And a fun fact, I think that Christy alluded to, is that what I really love is storytelling. That's part of what I appreciate about data. And in my free time, I really like to work with films and photography. And this past weekend, a film that I worked on got into Tribeca. I was not the director. I did the production design. But it was a really great experience.
Straight from Tribeca, y'all. So exciting.
Well, I'm glad I get to follow that. So Mark Luvis, Senior Director at DIRECTV. My role is to make our MarTech stack work better because of working together to find the right platforms that fit our customers' needs, our internal team's needs, across the enterprise, both B2B, B2C, et cetera. My fun fact, I'm so interested in finding how systems integrate and connect that I've been pulling the fire alarm in the back. Sadly, it hasn't necessarily led to the evacuation of the room. So hopefully we do a good enough job where people stick around.
Awesome. So speaking about big fires, can you please provide us a little bit overview of what the challenges DIRECTV had? So working with Mark over the last 5 years, I've watched him go from AT&T to DIRECTV. He had a really large challenge on his hand when he moved over, and that's kind of how we started talking. So Mark, can you give us a little overview of that?
How do you assess something when you start with nothing, right? So sometimes change is thrust upon you, and we were certainly put in that position. Envision a tech stack map that doesn't have anything. We don't know what our campaign management system is going to be. We don't know how we're going to enable data. We don't know how we're going to handle identity. We don't have a data layer to operate off of. Those are challenges, right? When you're starting from scratch, it certainly makes you rethink why you took this job. But having said that, as a MarTecher, very rare that you get to walk into an organization and have a blank canvas. And certainly was a huge opportunity that we were excited about. In terms of our challenges, you kind of pick one. We were slow in terms of how we operated. We required a lot of people to do the operations. We didn't have a center of excellence when it came to how to get an audience out, how to get information spread across various marketing technology and ad technology platforms. All of those we had to take into account and address. Tealium, frankly, was the first platform we picked. The reason we did is its flexibility, right? Jeff repeated during the customer advisory board yesterday over and over again that they're the neutral layer, right? We see them just as that. There's a reason we picked you first, and that's because it didn't matter what campaign management solution we went with that for. It didn't matter what our identity play was going to be. We knew that at least our data hub and spoke model, if you will, was going to be able to address and handle it.
Awesome. Now, Vic, there was a lot of challenges when you start with nothing, and you got brought on board right after Mark had kind of started.
Right.
So from your standpoint, from an operational standpoint, kind of what were the initial hurdles that made it difficult? Like you had a lot of data, tons of data, and there's a lot of potential there. What did you do, and how did you approach this to kind of unlock that potential?
Sure, yeah. I think, as Mark said, we started with a blank canvas, and I think our data partners, seeing this blank canvas, took that as an opportunity to change the structure that the data utilized. And that was a good decision for the future, but it did mean that after transitioning, it made it incredibly difficult to compare our new data environment to the old. And so it was really difficult to enable validation. And another item that we did run into was the difficulty in account identification. Because we were merged with AT&T, we were bundled with them frequently, and so the account numbers were changed. And now that we were separating from AT&T, those account numbers were complicated. So we ended up having 3 core account identifiers, which is not that great when you're supposed to have one.
That's a struggle for sure. So you have people, you have processes, you have technology, you're trying to rebuild all of these things. How long did you have to do these things?
Not long enough. But it is what it is. I think Mark has a beautiful metaphor here.
Yeah. So my wife and I are huge Star Trek people. I don't know if anybody in the audience is, but one of the common occurrences you'll see in an episode is a technical expert, someone that knows what they're doing and knows how to prioritize problems on a ship, comes to the captain and says, something's wrong and it's going to take 2 days to fix. And the next line is always the captain saying, great, you have 6 hours, get it done. And we always laugh in my household around, it's not like they're not prioritizing it. It's not like they haven't put all the resources they can on it. We were kind of given the same problem when we were installing, right? We were told, we repeated over, and it's an 18-month process. It's going to take a long time to get this right. And then we were told, you got 9 months, right? And that's when you get that statement, you start to think about everything. And as I said, blank canvas. You're not just painting the picture in one little quadrant. You're painting the whole thing. So you've now got to figure out, all right, how do I transition everything all at once, all at the same time? It's pretty tough. We're on this stage, right? That means we did something right? They wouldn't ask failures to show up. So, I'm completely biased. I think we did a great job.
I do think we did really good with the time that we had. Yeah.
It was a really tough time, and it was fun and very inspirational to watch kind of the process that DIRECTV went through and how quickly they were able to kind of evaluate not just the data sets, but the thinking around data. And I'd love for both of y'all to talk about that. I know that's a lot of internal shifting and a little changes too. What were some of the key challenges you had about when you're reevaluating these new data sets or these new platforms, not just on your team, because there's 2, but how many are on your total team that helped make this transformation in 6-8 months?
12.
12 people?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we're a football team plus a coach.
Love that. So tell me about some of those struggles and challenges and how you overcame them.
Well, we ran into a few problems with.
They're not here. You can talk about them.
I know. Okay. I think when you bring on a CDP, a lot of times it's pitched as kind of like a blue sky solution. And it is. You can get a lot of benefit when you have something set up that's functioning well. And you're able to transfer your audience process from using a list to using an audience that is updated regularly using real-time data. But in order to leverage something like that, it needs to be reliable and it needs to be understood. And one of the problems that we initially ran into was there was a lack of education about the way in which Tealium operated. It wasn't a data warehouse. It wasn't something you can send a data attribute to and then leverage the next day. You had to have a lead up in order to build those audiences and build those integrations. So there was a lot of education that needed to happen. And trying to educate at the same time that you're trying to enable is really difficult. But as we said, we were able to do it. And now that we have this CDP up and running, we're able to focus again on the education process and on ensuring that our processes are well understood across all of the teams, not just in marketing technology, but also in IT, with our central data office, with our marketing teams, with our business teams.
And Mark?
A lot to attack there. I'm sure Vic and I butted heads plenty of time because, to her point, her role is to get us migrated, to get us off one ship and onto the other, while changing every board that they can. My role is different. My role is to drive adoption, right? I think I said it to a group yesterday around, doesn't matter how good the people are, doesn't matter how good your platforms are, doesn't matter how good your processes are. If you can't drive adoption, you still have a turd of a product, right? So it can do everything, but you need people to use it. So while Vic is over here trying to have a target that's not moving, I'm over here moving the target and saying, what are the new data sets we want to use? How do we want to change the campaign structure? Have we thought about personalizing this way or that way? How do I connect to this platform so I can start to drive a self-service model over here? That adoption was hard. It took a long time. I think we're still doing it, right? We have to talk about it all the time, and that frankly it'll probably never end. But I do think we've started to make headway and gotten skins on the wall and to say, look, we are successful. We can offer your organization or your business more value, the ability to work faster. Look at all the times we've already done it. And I think that's a huge success at DIRECTV.
I think a lot of organizations really struggle with that, like connecting the different data sets, educating, trying to get everybody on board, because everybody looks at a CDP as something different, right? Or they wanted something different out of it. And you had to deal with a lot of those struggles. What were like some of the key learnings throughout that process that you have now as you were going through it, that you've learned from it? And then how did Tealium help y'all kind of get and overcome those barriers?
I think something we learned through that process is the need to have frequent touch bases. So we ended up setting up weekly governance meetings, essentially, and office hours. And so we have meetings with teams on a very regular basis to ask them, what is going on? How is it functioning when you try to go through this process? What are your feelings? And by approaching it from a realm of empathy and trying to understand the problems that they run into, we're able to investigate if our process actually does meet their needs, and we can modify the process in order to meet these moving goals, but in a way that our data systems are still reliable.
Okay. And Mark, what about you? I mean, you have a different role, so a different set of learning processes.
So this is where Vic and I butt heads again, right?
I very frequently threaten to mail him rotten fish.
Yes.
Our meetings are really fun, y'all.
Well, in terms of from a data perspective, things we learned, don't take too big of a bite, right? Don't start with, don't try to move the whole house all at one time, right? That's something I think we learned the hard way. Nail your identity. If you come in with bad identity, was no funner day when I told my Tealium team, I need you to just wipe the whole thing and we got to start from scratch because we screwed up the identity. And I guarantee you we won't do it again because it's a terrible conversation. You have to pause everything. You have to redo all of it. And it hurts. It really does. So, in terms of how we could, things we learned, I think those are the two most valid points for me.
That's great. I mean, and let me just reiterate, they're a year in on this process, so it's pretty amazing when you think about everything that you've stood up and all the processes you've put in place and you're implementing and you're continuing to educate, and that's a very long process. What are you most proud of? Like, what are some of the use cases, some examples? What are you most proud of what you've done from a campaign perspective, from an internal education, people, technology?
Sure. We've been setting up a wiki page with a lot of the information related to Tealium, working to try and establish essentially a center of excellence so that we can help people understand how Tealium operates and the ways in which they can leverage it effectively. And that's really helped us in kind of transferring business thought from a touch point sort of one-time list send campaign process to something that's more journey-based, something that's more rooted in the real-time data and the way that people's interactions with the business change day over day.
I'm going to do a rule of 3 on this one, right? In terms of the things I'm most proud of, whenever someone just shows up at your door and says, I hear you have gold, please give me gold. The data layer we created, I think, is gold, right? I've heard it a couple times today already. If you put bad data or you put too much data in, say, an AI solution, or frankly, any MarTech solution, right? This statement applies across the board. You're going to get a negative outcome. I think the data layer and how we consolidate, do what we've always wanted to do, consolidate it into a single source, operate that single source, flatten the data across a user, and then keep a steady stream of updates on that user so that way we're always aware of where they're at in their journey, and we're not making the assumption that they want an offer. The second thing is we've developed something that's super scalable. Something that certainly applies in my house is sometimes the best approach is just shut up. Don't say anything. And I think we've designed something where we can enable that very, very quickly. We have several use cases. I think one of Kelly Jo's slides was, or at least statements was, there are certain instances where we are able to do something in minutes, where in an old architecture, it took us days. It took us 5 FTE all day for a whole week to get it done. That's huge, right? That flexibility is awesome. And then lastly, to pat ourselves on the back a little, I think we did pick the right platform. DIRECTV is not a simplistic business. We're one of those, we have 1,000 SaaS platforms. And as a result, we have to connect to all of them, right? We can't just say, oh, I can't connect to you, so you're gonna be left hanging out to dry. The fact of the matter is we've connected to 16 platforms within the MarTech space. We've already identified 3 more we want to connect to. Every time you guys release a new connector, we want to be cognizant of it because we're going to attack it immediately. I get excited every day I get to go talk to someone within the organization and say, I've already been helping you, but now I'm going to help you even more.
So along those lines, because you've done a lot, not only just from a MarTech standpoint, a people standpoint, of processes, education, have you started to notice internal change within the organization around data processes, how data is being handled, and how data is being treated across your different teams?
Yes, thank God. Yeah, we're having teams kind of critically examine things in advance a lot more. So NFL season is coming up. What are the plans that we think we can leverage? What type of attributes would be necessary for that? And so by having these conversations, we're able to get insight into that ahead of time so we can go ahead and start building those data pipelines and filling up these audiences.
It'd be great when you get moments IQ up. I'm just going to say that out loud right now.
Oh, I can't express to you how excited moments get. That will change at least our website experience for the current customer. That's on the adoption list, right? Top of the list. Outside of that, I think in terms of how we've kind of changed the organization, we had our ad sales team show up to our door and say, man, this is something we haven't had in 7 years. And you go, why not? Right? So they've shown up. We've incorporated this into our B2B business, that side of the business. We've incorporated this into decisioning as a good example. We've really enabled our marketers to make complex logic and machine learning models out of that. So yeah, everybody's kind of showing up at the door, right? And it gets a lot easier and a little bit harder. If I can get another FT, that'd be great. I'm just kidding. No pressure. I think we're driving so much adoption that it's fantastic that we get to essentially have slides that have all the ways we're helping the business.
Yeah.
And it's better for our research as well. The ability to create holdout groups that are actually statistically significant is miles and away better than what it used to be.
Yeah. No, I'm so excited to see what y'all are going to do after just 1 year. I mean, it's pretty phenomenal what you've gotten up off the ground, the learnings that you've had, the savings and the value you've been able to bring and provide to DIRECTV. We have about 5-ish minutes left. So I would ask a question to both of you. Vic, you first. What are you most excited about in the future, and what would you have done differently looking back, right?
Yeah. In the future, I think one of the things that I'm most excited about is, as Mark kind of mentioned earlier, this scalability. So in the past, we would have audiences that needed to be suppressed for different reasons, and we would get updates to these suppressions. And we would need to update that suppression audience across all of the 150 audiences that exist. And now, instead of having to do manual updates across 150 audiences, we just change the one. We just change a little bit of a rule within Tealium, and then it changes over time. And that ability to have such a tremendous change with such a minuscule amount of work because we've done the due diligence of setting up a really good system is amazing for me.
I mean, that's waterfall storytelling right there.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And what would you have done differently?
Oh,
You glossed over that one.
yes. While I understand the want to paint a new and brighter picture and to change the data rules as we're transitioning into a new environment, it does make it very difficult to validate. And that became a really combative space that took a lot more effort and a lot more time than I think was worth, unfortunately.
Fair. And Mark?
Most excited about? More. I mean, I think I was called the most difficult client twice yesterday. And
Demanding.
I will
Demand
carry that
TV.
with a badge of honor because you know the reality is Tealium can do a lot. They can do a lot for DIRECTV. I've already said once that I think moments will change how we treat data in this company, and I will stand by that, and I will argue with anybody. And later today, if you put beers in me, I will yell at you and tell you how important it is. More is a statement that also applies to more connectors, more hyper-personalization, more audiences, the ability to automate campaigns so that way we don't need human beings to continually touch it. I mean, so when I say more, it covers a lot of bases, but it's a true statement. In terms of what we could have done differently, my pride likes to say nothing because we did everything perfectly, but I know that's not true. What could we have done differently? In a perfect world, I would have wanted to change one thing at a time, one platform at a time. But the reality is that couldn't happen. So outside of building a time machine, which, Jeff, if you can add that to the products offerings you may have, I think if we could have gone a little faster in the beginning, probably would have helped. But there's risk to that too. So I'm going to come back to what I said initially. I didn't do anything wrong. We did perfect. We were perfect every single time.
I mean,
we made the best decisions we could with the information we had at the time, and I do not regret the decisions that we made.
What Vic said.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much.